and it all began with 4 rough, life-saving words. The barn was silent except for the faint sway of a rope, dangling like a cruel question in the cold November air. Samuel Hartwell stood in the doorway, shoulders heavy, eyes fixed on it. 3 months. That's how long it had been since Martha's fever took her from him. 3 months of silence in a house once filled with her laughter. He had measured that silence against the weight of the rope every night since. But then, he heard it. A sound so small it might have been mistaken for wind. A child's cry, thin and desperate, carrying across the prairie like smoke. Samuel blinked, lowered his head, and listened again. There it was. Not wind, not imagination. A child. Grabbing his lantern, he stepped into the biting frost. Each step crunched against the hard ground as the yellow light stretched long shadows across the grass. The cries turned to whispers. And then he saw them. 2 children. A girl, maybe 8 years old, hair tangled and wild, clutching a smaller boy whose bare feet were already blue from cold. Their clothes were rags, thin as paper, no protection against the winter night. "Please, mister," the girl rasped. "We ain't thieves. We was just resting." Samuel's lantern shook in his hand. He saw hunger in their eyes, bones sharp beneath skin, and fear that came from knowing the world had no place for them. He remembered Martha's last words. "Promise me you won't let this world make you hard. There's enough hardness already." Samuel drew a breath, voice rough but steady. "Both of you inside now." The rope in his barn suddenly felt very far away. Inside the house, the air was warmer but heavy with silence. The children sat at Martha's old kitchen table like they expected to be thrown out at any moment. Their wide eyes followed every move Samuel made, as if kindness might vanish the second they reached for it. Lucy's eyes flicked toward the door. 3 weeks, maybe 4, Pa got sick, died in Millerville. Townfolk said they'd find us homes, but they wanted to split us up. I ain't letting nobody take Tom. Her small hands tightened around her brother. Samuel's throat constricted. He remembered being a boy himself, watching his father waste away, and that same bone-deep fear of being left alone in a world that swallowed children whole. "You got anywhere to go?" he asked quietly. Lucy shook her head. "Maybe an aunt in Colorado. But winter's coming hard." The wind rattled the window panes. Samuel's voice broke the silence, firm but weary. "You can stay tonight, both of you. Room upstairs." Lucy's eyes lit like embers catching flame. "Really, mister? We won't be no trouble." Samuel collected the empty bowls. "We'll see come morning." Samuel barely slept. He sat at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, watching Lucy braid Tom's hair with the tenderness of someone twice her age. For the first time in months, the house had the faint echo of family again. But at dawn, that fragile peace shattered. A pounding shook the front door. "Don't know anything about missing children," Samuel replied, steady but cold. Crane's smile carried no warmth. "Of course. Mind if we look around?" It wasn't a request. The men pushed through, boots loud on Martha's clean floors, opening closets, checking corners. Bradley leaned close, reeking of liquor. "Sam, let 'em go. Orphanage has food doctors. Kids belong in proper care." Samuel's jaw tightened. Proper care, or cages and work farms? Samuel glanced down at Lucy and Tom, their small hands wrapped around his coat. In Lucy's fingers glinted Martha's locket, the one Samuel had given her earlier that evening. For the first time since Martha's passing, the house didn't feel like a tomb. It felt like home. "More interested than I've ever been," Samuel said, voice rough with emotion. And so it was settled. Weeks later, the papers were signed, and the Hartwell family, once broken, was whole again. Lucy grew up in that house, strong and bright, graduating from the teacher's college, later walking down the aisle with Samuel at her side. Tom learned the rhythms of ranch life, working the land until prosperity replaced poverty. Years rolled on. Laughter returned to Martha's kitchen. The rope in the barn was cut down, not for despair, but for mending fences, the very spot where two shivering children once waited for salvation. Samuel lived long enough to hold his grandchildren, to see Tom thrive, to watch Lucy braid her daughter's hair in Martha's rocking chair. On his final morning, sunlight streamed through those windows that had once framed only loneliness. He closed his eyes, knowing Martha's promise had been kept. Because sometimes, the family you choose becomes the truest one of all. And sometimes, saving others is the only way to save yourself. Outside, 6 horsemen circled his house. Their faces were hidden by bandanas, their voices low and cruel. At the front sat Marcus Webb, the town banker, a man who lined his pockets through government contracts with the very orphanages that swallowed children whole. "Hartwell," Webb's voice cut through the cold. "Send out the brats or we'll smoke you out." Samuel leveled his rifle. "Over my dead body." Webb raised his torch higher. "That can be arranged." For a heartbeat, it felt like the world held its breath. Samuel imagined Martha's locket, Lucy's small hands, Tom's quiet fear. He thought of the rope in his barn, the one that once promised escape. Tonight, it wasn't escape he needed. It was fight. "First man who throws that torch gets a bullet," he shouted. "I've got nothing left to lose. Can you say the same?" The standoff stretched long and taut, until the sound of more hoofbeats thundered from the darkness. Through the smoke appeared Sheriff Bradley, not drunk this time, and Judge Morrison, flanked by armed deputies. "Stand down, Webb," the judge barked. "By order of the court, Samuel Hartwell has emergency custody of those children. Any interference is a federal offense." The riders scattered. Webb dropped his torch, the flame hissing out in the frost. Samuel lowered his rifle, children clinging to his legs, heart pounding. The fight for family was only just beginning.